Hello, everyone. And welcome to Buddhist Motivation, the place where we dive deep into the teachings of Buddhism, exploring the intersection of emotional intelligence, spiritual growth, and inner peace. Today, we'll embark on a profound journey, exploring the powerful transition from isolation to integration, and how spiritual clarity and emotional awareness can transform our lives. I firmly believe that the title of today's story, From Isolation to Integration, a journey of spiritual clarity and emotional awareness, perfectly encapsulates the very essence of our spiritual path. It's a reminder that the path to true understanding often feels lonely, but it is precisely through embracing our inner truth and integrating all aspects of ourselves that we find wholeness and peace. Before we dive into today's story, I kindly ask you to support this channel by giving this video a like and subscribing if you haven't already. Your engagement truly motivates me to create more valuable content for you. And of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave your reflections in the comments below, as they are not only helpful, but inspiring for me to continue sharing this journey with you. Now, let's begin the story. Life often feels like walking into a room full of people engaged in casual conversations, while you, with a heightened sense of awareness, find yourself noticing the deeper, hidden patterns that no one else seems to see. The laughter, the small talk, the fleeting interactions. They seem to carry no weight for most, but to you, everything feels profoundly different. It's like you're holding a telescope, seeing galaxies of meaning and truth while everyone else is simply content with the surface. This kind of perception is often a source of confusion and isolation, especially when you try to communicate these deeper insights, but the world around you remains indifferent. It's an overwhelming experience to feel, see, and understand things others cannot, and yet be told that you are overthinking or reading too much into things. The true difficulty lies not in seeing deeply, but in knowing what to do with that awareness. In Buddhism, we are taught to see beyond the ordinary, to look into the true nature of things, to awaken to the world as it is without distortion, without preconception. But just as in the Buddhist journey of enlightenment, this deeper vision can often feel isolating, even burdensome. It is not always easy to be aware of the subtle energies in the world, the ones others are blind to. And like the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, those who achieve clarity and insight may find themselves standing alone, separated from the distractions of the world, yet unable to share that clarity with others. The burden of clarity, Carl Jung's theory and the Buddhist way. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important." This speaks to the heart of many spiritual practitioners, especially those walking the path of enlightenment. When you begin to see the world differently, when you start feeling the vibrations of truth that others cannot, it often creates a sense of separation. Yet, this separation is not a flaw, but a calling, just as the Buddha's own realization led him to separate from the world in order to seek truth. You too may feel that the path to spiritual clarity is one that requires solitude. In the Buddhist tradition, we understand that everything is impermanent, including our perceptions and thoughts. When we feel deeply about something, It's not just intellectual understanding but an emotional and spiritual resonance that goes beyond the mind. This connection to deeper truths, emotional intelligence, as it is often termed in psychology, can be overwhelming. In Buddhism, this is often seen as part of the nature of dukkha, suffering, arising from our attachments to the world, and our desire to be understood by others. But rather than letting these feelings of alienation lead to despair, we can view them through the lens of compassion and mindfulness. Instead of suppressing our insights to fit in, Buddhism teaches us to embrace the impermanence of our feelings and the interconnectedness of all things. We are not separate from others, even when it feels that way. This realization helps us shift from a place of loneliness to one of compassion for ourselves and others who are also suffering in their own ways. Embracing the anima and animus, integrating the inner opposites. Jung's concept of the anima and animus, the unconscious feminine and masculine energies within each of us, offers a fascinating parallel to Buddhist teachings on duality and non-attachment. In Buddhist philosophy, we are encouraged to transcend dualities like male and female, good and evil, light and dark, recognizing that all these opposites are ultimately interdependent. In the same way, Jung suggests that these hidden aspects of the self, the anima and animus, play a critical role in our emotional lives. When we are unaware of these internal forces, they can drive us toward destructive behavior. But when we come to understand and integrate them, they lead to greater wholeness and spiritual maturity. In Buddhist terms, this is akin to the integration of samsara, the cycle of suffering, and nirvana, the state of liberation. The anima in men and the animus in women can manifest as mood swings, unexplained longings, or intense projections onto others. By acknowledging and integrating these energies, we can start to heal the conflicts within. And it is this integration that allows us to move toward inner peace. In the Buddhist path, integration happens when we observe our emotions without attachment, accepting them as they are, and not letting them drive our actions. We learn to live in harmony with both the masculine and feminine energies within us, transcending the dualities and embracing the unity of all things. The cost of clarity, the Buddhist view on silence and expression. In Buddhism, silence is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of clarity. Similarly, those who see the world with deeper awareness, those who perceive the subtle energies in interactions, often face the painful decision of whether to speak or remain silent. Jung wrote about this phenomenon, saying that the more deeply you see, the more isolated you can become. The weight of understanding can feel too much for others to bear, and so we find ourselves silencing our truths to avoid alienation. In Buddhist practice, this tendency to mask our true selves is an obstacle to true liberation. The path to enlightenment requires authenticity, and it's in embracing our full selves, even the parts that are difficult or uncomfortable, that we begin to transform. This is not about constantly speaking out, but about finding balance, knowing when silence serves the soul, and when speaking the truth becomes an act of compassion. Consider the story of the Buddha's enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. He could have stayed silent, meditated in solitude, and accepted his newfound peace. But he chose to speak, to share his insights, to help others. In doing so, He revealed that true enlightenment is not about withdrawal, but about engaging with the world, no matter how challenging or misunderstood that may feel. The journey to individuation and spiritual awakening. Jung's idea of individuation, the process of becoming the full, integrated self, can be seen as the path toward spiritual awakening in Buddhism. The Buddha's journey was one of self-realization, where he went through intense personal suffering, contemplation, and insight. Ultimately, his enlightenment was not a sudden gift, but a gradual integration of all aspects of himself, including his doubts, fears, and desires. The process of individuation requires us to face our inner darkness, not with fear, but with understanding and compassion. In the same way, spiritual awakening often involves a process of confronting and integrating the shadow parts of our psyche, those parts of ourselves we have ignored, suppressed, or rejected. By doing so, we become whole. We cease to run from our fears, anxieties, and uncertainties. Instead, we embrace them as part of our journey toward deeper wisdom and compassion. In Buddhism, this is reflected in the practice of mindfulness and meditation. By observing the mind without judgment, we come to understand the impermanent nature of our thoughts and feelings. We learn to see them, not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. His is the essence of enlightenment: seeing clearly, understanding deeply, and integrating all aspects of ourselves, leading with compassion and truth. The Buddha's teachings show us that true wisdom arises not from the absence of suffering, but from the acceptance and understanding of suffering. The clarity that comes with emotional and spiritual intelligence may feel isolating, but it is also a gift, one that allows us to see beyond the surface, to perceive the interconnectedness of all things, and to lead with compassion. By embracing both our inner opposites and the deep truth of our experiences, we can walk the path of spiritual awakening. As you embark on your own journey, remember, the burden of clarity is not meant to weigh you down, but to guide you toward deeper understanding and compassion. Just as the Buddha faced the challenges of his own path, so too can you face the challenges of being a deeply sensitive and aware individual. Let your insight be a beacon for others, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of truth and love. This path may not always be easy, but it is the path of the awakened mind, a path that, once walked, brings peace, wisdom, and connection to all beings. And remember, like the Buddha, you are not alone on this journey. There are others walking beside you, waiting to recognize the light within you. And that brings us to the end of today's journey from isolation to integration, where we learned how emotional awareness and spiritual clarity can guide us towards deeper self-understanding. Remember, the journey to inner peace and enlightenment is not always easy, but it is a path worth walking. I truly hope that today's story has resonated with you and encouraged you to look within, embrace your truth, and integrate your emotional intelligence with your spiritual practices. If you found this video valuable, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Buddhist Motivation for more insightful content on your spiritual journey. Your presence here matters, and it's a true privilege to walk this path with you. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, may you walk in peace and awareness.